Hello everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us today for our webinar on how to master the art of responding to reviews. My name is Nina, I'm one of the marketing coordinators over here at Glassdoor and I will be your moderator for the day. So just a couple of webinar tips for attendees before we get started. Your audio is already streaming over the web, so please make sure your speakers are turned on and turned up. All lines will be muted to avoid background noise, and you can ask questions at any time by submitting them in the Q&A tab in the lower left corner of your window. To be mindful of everybody's time, we will save all Q&A till the end of the presentation, but please feel free to submit your questions whenever you may have them. I'd like to invite you all to join the conversation with us socially using the hashtag GDChat, as we will be live tweeting throughout the webinar. Now I'd like to introduce our amazing speakers for the day. We're joined by Lamar, who is the head of employment brand at GoDaddy, as well as Szenyes, who is a program manager at GoDaddy. And then we have our very own Molly McKinstry, who is a sales manager of enterprise accounts here at Glassdoor. So without further ado, Molly, I will let you take it away for us.
Great. Thank you so much, Nina, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody, depending upon where you are calling in from. We're really looking forward to spending the next hour together and talking about, the importance of responding to reviews on Glassdoor and how to really get comfortable with that as a concept. So quickly just outlining our agenda today, we are going to start with the importance of responding in general. Why do we find more and more employers, engaging with this as part of the Glassdoor platform? And we're going to share some pro tips as to how to get started if you and your team are not already doing this today, and really looking to share best practices for you to walk away with. As Nina said, we do have Lamar and Aaron joining us from GoDaddy, so we are certainly going to hear directly from them and continue to understand, pro tips from those already doing it so successfully. I think that's going to be a really great portion of today's discussion that I know I'm looking forward to. And lastly, as an agenda item, we are going to save time for Q&A. So please, as questions come up, make sure you type them into the box here, and we will get those addressed for you. So without further ado, let's get into it and really just talk about why, as an employer, your voice matters. Nina, in her introduction, did share that I lead one of our enterprise client teams here at Glassdoor. I have had the great fortune of being here for 5.5 years, and I have to say, really just the evolution of empowering the employer and really organizations getting behind this notion of transparency has been so rewarding to see and really amazing, because it's truly been a transformation. For anybody who's been in this industry for several years, you could even attest to all of the changes that have already taken place in such a short period of time. And really the reason being is because the way candidates interact with future employers and really the overall job search experience has fundamentally changed. The days of blindly applying for a job they're really long gone. And this is because today's candidates treat their job search as a critical decision, and we think here at Glassdoor that's an incredible thing. It should be a critical decision, one where they rely on information like reviews and research and referrals before deciding where they want to go to work. I think, again, if I rewind to maybe just 3 to 5 years ago, this was a scary notion, and, the concept of candidates having all of this information at their fingertips was something that made us uncomfortable. But really now it's something for every one of us to embrace, and I think we're going to talk through that today and the reasons why. So just kind of further reiterating that, the job search experience has changed. And as a result, the way that we as employers can successfully attract talent has also had to change. We've had to evolve alongside our candidates. job seekers behave much more like consumers today. With more access to information than ever before, they are really carefully considering their choices. And again, and you will hear this from me multiple times throughout, the next 20 minutes, that is a really good thing. It's better for the candidate long term. It's better for your organization long term. And the ability for job seekers to have a very just honest understanding of what a role is going to be like before accepting it is a good thing. So, if we take a step back and just kind of understand research in general, we all go online to research before we buy, whether it's, a Google search and then to Amazon or TripAdvisor. All of us are looking for information before we make decisions. 81% of shoppers conduct research online before buying. That number was probably even higher last week with Black Friday and Cyber Monday. But, that's really, again, no surprise in terms of how consumer behavior has changed. Beyond that, 7 out of 10 people seek reviews before making any purchase. And, we're talking about something as easy as a cotton shirt all the way to, a camera that could cost upwards of hundreds of dollars. So even for relatively insignificant decisions, we are finding that as human beings, we are doing a ton of research. The average person going to 7 online websites before making a purchase. So I don't share all of this to be redundant. It's really just, a good reminder to all of us that the world we are operating in is a different world. The way that we are going to stand out from, the crowd and really win on this war on talent is by embracing the way job seekers are making decisions, and certainly part of that is embracing the additional information available to them. Because of the wealth of information on the internet or job boards or professional networks, social media, etc., candidates have high expectations. And, I think that makes our role in, talent management, recruitment, employer brand, only that much more important. Job seekers want way more information than just the job description. And according to a Glassdoor user survey, we know the top 5 things that job seekers want to know when they research are the following. 1, what makes this organization an attractive place to work? 2, compensation. 3, being benefits. 4, the mission, the vision, the values. What does this organization, stand for? And then, 5, not surprising, just the basic company information. Where are you located? What's the size of the organization? I mean, things like that. But what we can't ignore is these are all pieces of information that candidates want to know. They are really going to demand to understand, and there are a number of different avenues where they're going to go to gain that insight. And you know what? They want to hear everyone's perspective. Although friends and family are still the most trusted resource at 72%, content provided by your employees is actually number 2. That is the number 2 most trusted source of information on any company, and that is, based on an Edelman global survey. So third party, not being, released by Glassdoor, but it really just reminds all of us that that information is available. Candidates and job seekers are going to do their due diligence to find it, and it's really up to us to make sure we understand what that story sounds like. So I think the last thing I would say here is that, yes, expectations are higher, but candidates are still not demanding perfection. Really what they want is a level of transparency and authenticity from employers. 90% of job seekers say that they want to work for a company that embraces transparency. And again, that is from a Glassdoor survey, and really no surprise when you think of the job seekers who are interacting with our platform. But, that's millions and millions of candidates month over month who are telling us that, 9 out of 10 of them want to work for an authentic organization that prides itself on being transparent. And, I think, again, certainly when we get to Lamar and Aaron from GoDaddy today, we're going to hear a great example of that. So, this transparent world that we speak of, it's really not new. We have now lived in a reviews culture for a very long time. Look at the organizations that you see here. I mean, gosh, certainly none of these are, foreign to any of us. Expedia really just kind of changed the entire industry of travel. Zillow, very similar for real estate. And, Glassdoor seeks to empower through information transparency as well. And, here we believe that while planning a nice trip or, buying a home, those are certainly important decisions. Where you go every day, day after day for your place of employment and how you make your living and away from friends and family and loved ones, that is a massive decision. So, because we know people consult online resources in kind of every realm of life, it really is no surprise that people are relying on sites like Glassdoor to make that critical decision about where to go to work. And because of that, the issues of trust are very, very relevant and compelling to both employees and consumers. And I really kind of stress this as a reminder to all of you, every single employee, current or future, is ultimately a consumer. And we as a culture are more likely than ever to consult the opinions of peers and others before making important decisions. So, what we're going to do today is talk about how, as companies, can you and your teams really embrace this and embrace the notion of heavily informed, heavily researched candidates and job seekers, and how can you maintain that level of control that you so want to maintain throughout that candidate journey. So, happening whether or not you are today actively on your Glassdoor profile and looking at it, employees and candidates are constantly looking at you, reviewing you, and researching you. And it's really important to understand, again, whether or not we're on board with it as a notion, it's important to understand that this is affecting your ability to hire and retain your current employees and your future employees. Going back, though, to the concept that candidates are not expecting perfection. They truly are not. And I think, when you hear that, there may be some eye rolling of just, oh my goodness, of course, though, they want all of the bells and whistles, and they want to work for, the biggest, the sexiest, the most exciting brands. But we know that's not true, because if a candidate was expecting or demanding perfection from an organization, the assumption would be then, as employers, you're expecting perfection in your candidates. And we're not, right? Everybody's a work in progress. Every organization can get better, just as every candidate has room to grow and improve. So I think the biggest takeaway here is just remember, your job seekers are looking for information, and they want to hear from your current employees. They want to hear from the people who have been in the role themselves. Your company website, your recruiters, your executive teams, of course, those are all avenues where we can get really positive insight about any company, no matter your industry, no matter your size. But what job seekers continue to share they find invaluable to their process is, but what are the people in the jobs themselves doing? So, if you're an established organization, you may be asking, why should we care, right? We already have this massive brand. We already have all of the success. This kind of doesn't really feel like this is relevant to us. And, I think we would very politely challenge you to think a little bit differently there, and think of what you could do and how much more compelling your story could become if you engaged your current employee base and you made them feel valued and heard, right? I mean, imagine if you turned to your current employees and you said, Gosh, you all are a part of this incredible company. We are so proud of all of the work that each of you do every single day, the effort that you bring, and we want you to speak up because your future colleagues and peers and those ultimately who are deciding whether or not to join you on this journey, they want to hear from you. So you know what we're going to do as your employer, we're going to ask you to get involved because we know how much your voice matters. You know, this is just going to allow you to continue to attract the right candidates. It's going to make your employees have, you know, that continued sense of pride that I think all of us want our employees to have. And quite honestly, it's going to give you an edge, you know, amongst your competition. You will stand out. And again, you know, GoDaddy is a great example of this where we'll hear further, but there are things you can be doing right now as an employer truly in, you know, the fight for the best of the best talent to empower your employees and utilize them as extensions of your recruitment team. So, okay, that's if you're, you know, a well-established, well-known brand. But what if you're fast-growing? You know, what if maybe you're not there yet? The sky's the limit. Certainly the goals are very high. I mean, this is your chance right now to start building your brand and take the reins on what this message is going to be. Get ahead of it. I mean, if anything, I think fast-growing companies are in this huge advantage if you're on the line today because this is your story to write. It maybe necessarily hasn't been written for you just yet, and living in the world that we do of, you know, employer brand management and really understanding that value proposition, make this a critical part of your overall strategy, and it will pay dividends to you and that candidate experience and just that pride that your employees are going to feel coming to work every day and representing your brand. Other interesting stats that I just quickly want to share is that 90% of candidates say they want to work for a company that embraces transparency. Again, that is 9 in 10 folks saying working for a transparent organization is going to matter to them. And 3 out of 4 people value reviews and ratings specific to companies when making a job decision. So if you have not yet spent time on your Glassdoor profile and at least engaging, you know, what people are saying, now's the time to do it. So we're going to get into the pro tips here soon, and I'm being mindful of time. You know, the other piece of this is that your company reputation also affects decisions by investors and partners and customers. I think maybe that surprises some people when they think at, you know, how can they utilize a site like Glassdoor? But, you know, this really goes beyond just employees. As you can see here, Edelman did a study and found that 63% of consumers will not buy products and services from a company that they do not trust. And conversely, 80% of consumers choose to buy intentionally from companies that they trust. And beyond that, they are going to recommend those companies to others. So the potential for building brand ambassadors is exponential here. Responding to someone's feedback can not only make that individual feel heard and valued, but it can increase their engagement with your brand. The impacts of this reach even further. I mean, if you think about the hundreds and potentially thousands of people with their eyes on this, hopefully, you know, making individuals feel valued and heard and more engaged with your brand is also just going to prove the type of organization you are: open, transparent, authentic. And that's, again, really the goal that we're setting out to achieve. So here's what we'd say. You know, the good news for you is that people really care about your perspective as an employer. They truly do. You know, for anybody who joined the call today and thought, you know, Glassdoor is just a place where employees go to leave feedback and, you know, that's really all it is. I really challenge you to rethink that because we know that job seekers want to hear from you as employers and they care what you have to say. 62% of candidates and job seekers say that their perception of an organization improves after seeing an employer simply respond to a review. Again, just think about that. 6 out of 10 people say no matter what, not even taking the review into consideration or the response, seeing that an employer took the time to respond to a review is going to improve their perception of you as an employer. So moving toward, organizational transparency is going to help foster this environment of trust with your current employee base and those future employees, and it really speaks volumes to the kind of employer that you are. I know in just talking to so many of our clients that, a lot of times we hear there may be some pushback internally to responding to reviews on Glassdoor, and there's some hesitation, and there's concern if it's really the right approach. I just strongly encourage you all to, screenshot this very slide, if nothing else, and the 62% stat is a really powerful one, and it again just goes to the idea of embracing transparency, being an organization that is open to developmental feedback, getting better. That's really the goal. So if you are just getting started, it is very easy to sign up for a free employer account on Glassdoor. I certainly encourage you to do so today. If you have not already, it allows you to set up company alerts, invite colleagues to respond to reviews and join the conversation, and really just monitor your reputation, identifying areas of improvement, ensuring your message is resonating with candidates. These are all things that you have the benefit of as a result of joining the Glassdoor platform with a free employer account today. Some of you are already participating in the discussion, and you are a current client. So I want to make sure you know that back in your employer center, all of those advanced analytics are there daily for you to interact with. Measure traffic to your page, look at the word clouds, filter review responses by departments, locations, date. All of these various filters are really going to help you and your teams and your hiring managers dig in and understand what's going well and where is there room for improvement. So really quickly before I pass this to Lamar from GoDaddy, I am going to say just some high-level advice on pro tips for responding to reviews and how to do it well. So first and foremost, you need to set guidelines. You need to determine your brand voice. You really should enlist the help of your marketing team to ensure that the message is consistent and it is cohesive across the entire brand. And you want to make sure you're using a non-defensive voice. I think that's a really important piece of this, and to make sure that the responses that you are building out are resonating. You want to make sure that you are coming, again, open to the feedback, open to the idea of transparency, and just really acknowledging the reviews. As a leadership team, we definitely want to recommend, identify the criteria for responding, which reviews really are deserving of that, and you're going to have to figure out how to prioritize those responses. For our next pro tip, we are also going to say, assign responsibility. This is going to take some cross-functional support internally. You are going to need to determine who will respond to the reviews. Is it going to be by function, by department, by specific role? And, we see a lot of success of enlisting leaders from various departments to divide and conquer, so that they're responding to reviews very specific to their team, to their department, to their scope of influence. You want to create a cadence for monitoring who's going to own, kind of review maintenance, and make sure across your social channels you're taking a look at reviews as they come in. And we'd also recommend curate some really strong template responses that can be tweaked and added as reviews continue to come in. So, finally from me, before we hear from the pros who are doing this themselves, we really strongly recommend implementing a feedback loop. And this is really important, because if you want to truly benefit from the feedback that you are gathering and learning on Glassdoor, you have to take it back internally. And you have to share it with the teams that are, either being reviewed or, the certain departments where the feedback is coming. The only way an organization can grow and get better and truly learn is to create that feedback loop. So make sure, absolutely make sure that that interview feedback is being shared with hiring teams. You know, when a candidate is saying how an interview experience was for them, good or bad, it is critical that the recruiters and hiring managers are receiving that information. Consolidate trends, you know, shedding light upon areas for improvement, similar to the above. If, you know, we now have a trend that there may be something we can improve in our interview process, roll that up, share that up, and make sure, you know, that the steps are being taken to make that happen. And then finally, use Glassdoor data to measure and inform engagement programs. You all likely already are or certainly will be putting a mobilization strategy in place to make sure you are aware of reviews, you do have a response strategy, and you want to measure that and really understand how successful it is and the work that you're doing, you know, the impact that it is having. So without further ado, I am going to pass the webinar over to Lamar Daniels from GoDaddy, and he is going to be able to share with us really what is happening at GoDaddy right now to take full advantage of, you know, the art of responding to reviews. So Lamar, it is all yours.
Thank you, Molly. That was great information, and I hope everyone enjoyed it. Hi, I'm Lamar Daniels. I'm the head of employment brand at GoDaddy, and I really just enjoy sharing our story. And I know that at some companies all this isn't as possible, but I think that with work and championing your efforts, you can definitely get there to some aspects. So why is Glassdoor important? For us, you know, I think it took us a time to realize that Glassdoor was important. When we really decided, like, we're going to take this on, we're going to put, you know, limited resources because, of course, everyone has, you know, do we have the bandwidth to do this? Do we have, you know, the time to do this? And we can't, you know, in a sense, do it halfway. So in 2015, about Q3, we decided to really look at the data on Glassdoor. And we realized, like, we had approximately 408 reviews prior to that, and only 26 of them had been answered. And there was no cadence or, I guess, process on how they were being answered. It was more so just some people felt, you know, within the leadership who had admin rights to go ahead and answer them. And I'm not sure if that was the best way for us to do it because there's no consistency. So we really dived in and started to look at our overall process of how we could do this and look at our ratings and how is this impacting, at the end of the day, the talent that we're bringing in. So as you can see, in 2015 Q3, we had about 172,000 views. You know, it was interesting. So we're like, that many people are looking at our site, so we probably should start getting some responses. So we came up with these reasons of why we felt we should respond. So hopefully, can you guys see my screen still? So let's go here. So one of the first reasons that we wanted to make sure that we were responding was top talent does not want to work for a company that does not care about their employees. You really, you know, we all want the best talent. We always talk about we need this person for this role. People are going on Glassdoor and checking before they're, you know, really deciding if they even want to apply. You know, also employees, your internal employees who are going to be part of your brand, they're the ones who are really helping building your brand. They want to know that their voice is heard. And when you think about that, that can be leveraged in so many ways for your brand. When you think 60% of our job seekers are checking Glassdoor, even prior to applying and definitely after, you know, an offer has been presented. And I think, too, with Glassdoor, there's just a real transparency and, you know, authenticity that you can really see. You know, are we that company, or are we this company? Do we have this mindset that we're doing everything and anything for our employees, or do we feel that, that's just a myth because Glassdoor is telling us something different? And with that, there's just a significant impact that can be to your brand. It could be great, and it could be a challenge. And the thing is, when you're responding to those, you have that opportunity to change that mindset, and not just the negative comments. And I see a lot of companies that respond very quickly and actively and aggressively to the negative and not necessarily to the positive. But when I look and review reviews, I can go and pull a review and see 90,000 people have viewed this positive review and only 8,000 have reviewed this negative review. Those numbers are that's almost 10 times the amount. And we really need to think about that. Like 10 times more people are reviewing this positive response versus this negative, because no company is perfect. So kind of think about that when you are, building this program out for yourself. So then we decided, let's do a pulse check in November of this year. Like, this was Q3. We started this in 2015. Let's look at where we're at. So since creation, we had about 310 reviews. Now we have our technical corporate side as well as our customer care side. And as you can see, we did a lot more reviews on our customer care side because that side of the company is a lot larger than our technical corporate side. But we went to now 88% overall responses. And Erin is definitely going to share with you on how we were able to achieve that number, because it was a championing of efforts, and it was an all-team effort, and it did definitely come from the top down. However, our reviews have almost tripled, right? So we were at 172,000 in Q3 of 2015. Now we're at over 417,000 in Q3 of this year. So just huge numbers. And when you think about how many applications you're getting to your career site or whatever job boards or avenues that you use, you kind of want to think that that's a lot of people viewing what you're doing at your organization. So I'm going to turn this over to Erin, who is going to tell you guys how we even got to beginning this venture. So Erin.
All right, so my name is Szenyes. I'm a program manager over here at GoDaddy. So I've been here just under 7 years. So Lamar came to me in last year in the third quarter and said, we got a little bit of a debacle. We need to take care of Glassdoor. So you are now the air traffic controller. Start controlling traffic. So I'm like, oh no, what do I do here? So thankfully, I own another product within our company who I had a similar process where it's a review tool and to get this done. So where do we begin? So the first thing was, how do I get this going? First thing, I have to establish buy-in. So without leadership buy-in, you'll get nowhere, believe me. If you're just sending out emails to people saying, hey, can you answer this? They're going to be like, who is this guy? So seek out the who's who. Go to leadership, whether it's, CEO or hopefully not that high of a level, but start from the top and go down. Get that leadership buy-in. You may not have to go far in your company. You may have a huge journey ahead. Don't get discouraged. I noticed when I first started, it was a lot of emails, a lot of no responding, continually nagging. Once I got that leadership buy-in, everything kind of started flowing, though. So once you have that buy-in, make sure that leadership knows what they're doing. So if they don't know what's going on and they're getting this, they signed off on something and they get an email and they don't know what's going on, that might just start getting filtered to the spam or the clutter folder. So you want to make sure that they understand what they're doing. So one thing you need to do, designate a champion. You're Erin, you're me, if you will. So Lamar saw what I was doing with other programs and stuff within us and said, okay, we need someone who can be assertive with leadership. They got to be fearless. So on a professional level, of course, but they got to be able to clarify and make sure these leaders know what they're signing up for and be on your side. So you're not going to get anywhere if they're not on your side. So the next step of that is kind of the method to the madness. Where do we go from here? So I sat down and established a game plan. Your communications, your meetings, your one-on-ones. Is it weekly? Is it bi-weekly? Is it monthly? You know, if you're only getting a couple reviews a month, you may not have to do it as much, but sit down, analyze, and look and see what's going on. So now that you have this leadership buy-in, you know, you got to organize this process. Sit down with the stakeholders, determine what we want. What do we want to do? What's our overall goal? Are we trying to get CEO approval up? Are we trying to get our overall ranking up? Obviously, we want all of those to be high, but make sure that you kind of have that goal. So in our case, I also met with our leaders to make sure they understood a cadence. You know, I'm sending these out as the air traffic controller to these various leaders, and whether it's an email, I'm meeting with them saying, hey, can you please respond to this? This is your department. You want to make sure that they know the cadence on these. So we decided we don't want necessarily to have a cookie-cutter response template. We want everything to be unique, so when people are reviewing these, because sometimes people sit down and do read everything, that they're not seeing the same answer, thank you for this, thank you for this. You know, we wanted it to be personal on there. So, and as Lamar pointed out, the positive reviews, they get way more views, so you want to make sure you're looking at everything. So not just the negatives, not just responding to those. You want to be at the positives as well. So I've sat down. Now this may be different from you. You don't necessarily have to do a scorecard, but I created a scorecard. So that way we have a baseline to measure our success. You know, this will also help us have a call-out area. So if people are lacking, you know, if you're sending this out in certain departments, like in our case we have TC and C3. If TC is not responding versus C3, you can send out the scorecard, this information to, you know, show, hey, these guys aren't doing their job, let's get this taken care of. So another thing, establish a goal or a milestone that you want to hit. These could be company-wide, you know, like I said, raising approval ratings, overall ratings, or it could be something personal, you know, I want to do this, I want to do that. Whatever you need to do to just help you go and not get stagnant in what you're doing. So, and, you know, carrying on with that, keep your eye on the target, follow up, follow up, follow up. You've got your assertive Aaron or me in there who means business. We've got our goals to reach. Make sure you're calling out these people that are not doing anything, they're ignoring stuff. You know, you have leadership buy-in, so now you got to make sure that if someone's not doing their job, you're calling that out and have leadership do that. So again, you're going back to the scorecard you have. Call out the slackers. You know, make sure leadership is practicing what they preach. You know, if they tell you that they're going to buy in and they're going to be answering these, maybe they commit to answering 2 a week, or they're going to start with a few months and go to here. Just make sure they're living up to what they actually bought in for. So, and again, you want to aim for the top. So you may have goals, but you want to keep on going. So maybe your goal was to get your company from a 3.5 to a 4.0. When you get there, don't just stop. You want to keep going, keep climbing, create new goals, find new ways to, you know, establish input and whatnot. So the last thing I wanted to touch on, I'm sure there's a million things I'm missing in my process. Feel free to answer or ask questions, but employee sentiment. There's a really cool thing we have here that Glassdoor has called the word cloud, that it points out the common pros and cons without you having to do any work. So if you're taking the lazy, you know, route and you don't want to read 400 reviews, you can go to this word cloud and you can actually see the sentiment behind all of these reviews and that what people are doing. So one of the things we have at GoDaddy is a yearly, it's called the GD Voice. It's a yearly survey that we send out to kind of find out what we're doing wrong, what we're doing right, and help set a tone for change. So Glassdoor's word cloud can definitely be leveraged and compared with these. So you can look and see, hey, this is what employees are saying in our survey, this is what they're saying in Glassdoor. Let's merge these together. Maybe these are the same. Wow, if it's being called out here in a private survey and on Glassdoor, this is probably something that we need to look at. So, and then last but not least, you know, make sure, again, like I said, you're reviewing all reviews. Sometimes there's positive reviews that are rated really high, but there's some nitty-gritty in there that's calling out. People may love your company and rate you a 5, but hate some of the processes that you have going on. So you need to make sure that you're not just replying with that cookie-cutter response saying, oh, thanks for responding, but you're actually reading those. So, and then you also want to look at the negatives as well. So, I mean, sometimes you'll get the negative ones that have positive things in there. So you want to make sure that you're just reading everything through clearly. Make sure your leadership isn't just pasting that canned answer. Now, a canned answer may work for you. It depends. That's your choice. I found in our case that we just wanted to have that intimate, personal one for each thing. Now, you got to make sure you have your leadership buying in on that because it is taking, you know, they have to sit down on a weekly basis. And in our case, we probably get maybe 10 to 15 reviews a week, something like that, so maybe more. So you want to make sure that, you know, they have the time to do this and get that all squared away. So lastly, I'm going to send it over to Lamar, and he's going to name a couple other practices we have at GoDaddy. And there we go.
All right, thank you, Aaron. I can't tell you what we would not, I don't know what we'd do without Aaron. He's just great at what he does and being that champion for the voice of Glassdoor for us. So thank you, Aaron. So I also want to share with you all, you know, some of the things that you can do to create more reviews. And again, you're going into this blind, not know if it's going to be positive or negative or neutral, but you want to go and, again, be authentic and transparent. So, you know, we put together various campaigns that we run throughout the organization. So I've created various, you know, collateral that's been posted around the organization to say, like, permission to brag, right? We want you to feel comfortable to go out and give us comments. We want you to feel comfortable to go out and champion GoDaddy's brand. If people want to come work for this organization, they need to know that people who work here are happy. And if they're not happy, what can we do to enhance that? Or what can we do to improve that situation? And there might be some low-hanging fruit that you can take quick advantage of, and then there might be some things that you need to champion to your executive team and say, hey, here is some of the challenges, here are some of your wins. You know, like Aaron pointed out, that word cloud, here's very clearly, very broadly, you can see where you're at, right? This is very easy to see. And so you need to figure out when you're going for that, you know, senior level person and they don't want to come work for you because of various comments, then you need to be able to have a response to those. And so these are just a few things that we have done, as well as we take some of this information and then we share it with what we consider our senior leadership team. And really, they discuss it in some of their staff meetings and talk about what can we do? Is there room for change? And honestly, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just a business decision and we have to move forward. But you have done all you can do is champion that, because you are now championing the voice of your customer, which is your employees. And really, that will go a long way, as well as them getting that response, knowing that you actually took time out of your day to respond and seeing who actually responds. Like me being the head of employment brand, I'm not going to respond to those. I need the VP of customer care or the VP of engineering to respond to those so that they know that this is not just fluff. This is actually someone who is a part of that department and answering those. So don't be scared to ask your employees to champion your brand for you. Even if it's when they start and you're saying, hey, you know, feel free to comment on how your interview process went on Glassdoor, or, you know, congratulations, you've been with us for a year, and we would love to know how you felt your first year is. Please feel free to go put that on Glassdoor and be prepared for it. So in closing, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I think Nina is going to take back over, and we are going to open this up for questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much to Lamar, Aaron, and Molly for sharing all of your wonderful insights and information for us today. So as Lamar mentioned, we will now open up the floor to Q&A. So if you have not already entered a question and you have one, please do so in the Q&A panel you'll see on the left-hand side. And for all of you that did ask, we will be sending out the presentation and recording post-webinar, so be on the lookout for an email from the Glassdoor marketing team for that. All right, so the first question that we have is kind of more of a statement that people are seeing and people posting fake reviews on their profile. So I will kind of direct this one to Aaron to take the first stab at it. So the question is, what's the best practice or action we can take to kind of handle a scenario where we feel that someone is posting a fake review?
I can't say that I've really seen too many reviews that I think were fake. Sometimes we do get ones that we definitely don't agree with, like maybe we had one time where somebody was saying that we are not tolerant of like certain cultures or whatnot, and that, I mean, it wasn't necessarily a flat-out lie, but maybe someone felt that we were that way. And so that's something where we really got to sit back, and I met with our head of our HR, and I talked to different departments, and we kind of, that one's one of those ones where it was very tricky, and we, instead of just sending it to one person, we kind of had a group of people look and establish a response and then post it on there. So I mean, it's really a case by case. I wouldn't say that there's any perfect way to answer that, but I mean, in that case, we basically took the response, tossed it around once we got the idea, and then responded back with, hey, you know, we're accepting of everything. We're a cultural melting pot, and we kind of just refuted what they said. But I don't think there's any particular way to do that correctly. So that's a tough one to put an exact answer on it.
Perfect. Thanks, Aaron. Another question that came through, and you know, I'll kind of direct this one to Lamar and anyone else that wants to hop in as well. What's the best way to encourage employees to write reviews?
I think you have to make them feel comfortable. You know, I think when I look, I've been at GoDaddy for over 7 years, and we have definitely changed. And I will be honest and say I don't know if transparency was as prevalent as it is today, you know, 4 years ago. And I think it's just continuous reinforcement, continuous, you know, various campaigns that you can run to say, hey, you know, go right ahead, do it, and don't feel that you're going to, you know, be, you know, I don't want to say scolded in a sense, but don't feel like there's going to be some challenges after if I put what I feel, positive or negative. It's anonymous. You do not have to put your name. So, you know, it's not like we know exactly who you are, but we want to know how you truly feel. And I think sometimes, sadly, some employees are intimidated to tell their supervisor, manager, or executive about their true feelings. And sometimes it is easier to voice that publicly, but at the same point, it's great information for us as a company and organization to be able to quantify.
Perfect. Thanks, Lamar. And Molly, the next question is for you. There's a couple of questions around how you can access the word cloud feature. Could you shed a little bit of light on that?
Yeah, sure. So the word cloud feature does come from owning your enhanced profile on Glassdoor. There are a number of kind of different and more premier advanced analytics that come as a result of purchasing that profile. With the free employer account that we talked about, you know, that really is just going to give you high level data. Unfortunately, the word cloud is not included in that, but really most important from the discussion today, it allows you to respond to reviews. And I think that's a really important stance that Glassdoor does take, which is, you know, whether or not you are an engaged employer and you are, you know, promoting branded content and your jobs on your page, we certainly want you to be able to have a voice back to your employees, and being able to respond to reviews is possible through that free employer account.
Perfect. Thanks, Molly. The next question is going to be directed towards Aaron and Lamar, so whoever wants to take a stab at it first, please go ahead. The question is, when asking current employees to review, how do you mitigate the risk of receiving negative feedback? Do you target happy employees or cast a wide net to receive honest and organic feedback?
Well, this is Lamar. I would say you don't know. And I would say, yeah, you cast that wide net and be ready for that feedback. You do not want to live in this world where you think that your company or your organization is doing A, B, and C great, and then reality of it is that your employees don't feel the same. You should be on the same page as your employees, understanding that you can't please everyone all the time, but if 20% of your organization only likes what you're doing, you've got some big challenges that you need to overcome. If 80% or 70% feels like we're doing an awesome job, that's a great number. You know, you can go in Glassdoor and see kind of what the average is of employers that are in your category, and make sure that you're kind of aligned in that realm with them, as well as Glassdoor's complete average.
Just to add on that, I think it's just if you want your reviews to be just genuine and organic, you just have to take the good with the bad, or the chance that that's going to happen. And this may answer someone else's question I saw on there. But if someone truly loves your company, but they maybe hate your process or something that you're doing, that generally shows. And that's why I say to always look at the positive reviews, because they may leave you a 5 out of 5 and then put, I hate this, I don't like that. So you want to make sure that you're reading those. But yeah, there's no really, if you want it to be organic, there's not really a way to target that.
Yeah, I completely agree with Aaron. And I think also, too, just a quick comment, don't look at Glassdoor as a negative thing. This is not negative. This is a positive way for us to be able to really dial into what our employees feel. So I don't look at any of this as a negative. I look at this as another resource tool that I am able to really know what our employees feel and be able to champion all of that for them.
Perfect. Thank you both. Kind of spitballing off the end of that question, the next one we have, I'll direct to Lamar. And Molly, I believe you have some insight on this one as well. The question is, I found that our leadership team is usually on the defense when it comes to Glassdoor reviews. So how can I start to build the case to show them how important responding is?
I think there's a lot of ways. Partner with your HR team, your HR business partner, and partner with your talent acquisition team. If there is an increase in declines, if you guys are not doing a survey to find out what those declines are for, a lot of people will tell you, I read your Glassdoor reviews and they're not that great. That's data for you to present. When you spend as much as most employers spend to attract and acquire talent, and your decline rate is going up significantly, or you are not seeing the type of talent, you're not being able to attract the type of talent, whether it's, applications or sourcing, then there becomes this cadence of you're chasing your tail, and you're spending way more money to attract this talent. And so for our leaders, usually when you start to be able to put dollars with some of these challenges, their ears perk up a little bit, and they're able to say, oh, okay, so you're telling me if I did this, I would save this amount of money. Okay, I'm going to do this, right? And when you can put it in terms that they can respect and understand, then you have that champion on your side.
Yeah, and this is Molly. I would just, certainly chime in and reiterate to what Lamar said, but I think, a really important thing he raised that is worth reiterating is the fact that, Glassdoor and the reviews that you're getting on Glassdoor and the trends that you're seeing on Glassdoor, they really are meant to help your organization. And I think Lamar said, don't be afraid of Glassdoor. Don't think of Glassdoor as a bad thing. And as long as an employer and as an organization, you can be open to getting better, to growing, to developing the exact same way we want our employees to, really, for our clients doing that, this becomes one of their favorite tools. And, it allows you to see what are we doing internally that our employees love, or what are we doing throughout our interview process that's really successful in setting us apart from our competitors. But on the flip side, where do we need to get better? And I think going back to the notion that everybody, every organization, every candidate, every employee has room to grow, think of Glassdoor as your resource as an employer to find out where is your room to grow. And, obviously you're going to take some of the feedback with a grain of salt. All of it is not going to resonate. But where you identify those themes and those trends, don't ignore them. Get them in front of your senior leadership, your C-levels, and have them really understand the opportunity for getting better as an employer, because that's really a win-win. If you can have happier employees, they will be more successful, more productive. There will be tangible business benefit to paying attention to your employee feedback.
Perfect. Thank you both. The next question, Erin, this one is more directed towards you. So do you have a time standard for responding to your reviews? For example, within X amount of days?
Not particularly right now. I mean, when I took over it, we were less than 7%. It was pretty ridiculous. So, I mean, we're upwards in 80 now. I'd like it to be, I mean, one of my goals, one of the things I said is to set goals. One of my goals would to be that when I go to send out my Monday morning email, whatever, that there's nothing there, that everybody's already answered it, that they're proactively going in there and answering them. So I typically, if I don't see a response within like a week or two, is when I start reaching out one-on-one. So I have the email I send out to our stakeholders or owners on this. And then if I don't see anything in maybe a week, that's when I might get on, Link and start messaging them, or I'll take a walk to their office. And so there's not really a particular time frame, but I mean, after like a week or two, especially if it's one that has, 50,000 reviews or something. I mean, I treat them all the same, so I don't want to necessarily say it's not. But if something has 1 million reviews, we're going to go for that. But yeah, I mean, I'd say after about a week is when I start going back. I circle back and start pushing on them and don't get discouraged. I mean, and if you can't get that person to respond to it, I mean, you may need to go higher or whatever the case, So, but I'd say probably about a week is when I start, poking again and saying, hey, what's going on? Why aren't you answering this?
Perfect. Thank you. The next question, Erin, this one is going right back to you. The question is, how can I become the Erin for my company? We're fast growing and my team is only comprised of me and 2 others. What are tips to be a really good brand champion?
How do you see that? You got to be assertive. So I'm terrible at talking on the phone and talking in groups, if you can't tell already. But in face-to-face or meetings or getting stuff done like this, I'm very assertive and I have no fears. So I mean, you want to take the professional approach to it. You don't want to be ridiculous, but at the same time, you have to be very assertive. So if you see that, if you want to become the Erin and champion that, if nobody else is doing it, I mean, as long as you're able to, take that ad hoc project or start doing it and start going up and, reach out to top levels and say, hey, nobody's doing this. I want to do this. I think we should do this. Provide the reasoning of why they should. And I mean, I don't think anybody's going to ever get in trouble if you're at a manager or someone that would be allowed to respond to this. I don't think anybody's going to be like, oh my gosh, that person is responding to stuff. They're not going to get mad at you. So if you think it needs to be done, grab the reins and start going. And then, but I mean, it is better to have that SLT buy-in. So, but be assertive and go for it. And it always helps when someone like Lamar at your company believes in you. So.
Perfect. Thanks, Erin. The next question, Molly, I'm going to direct at you for. The question is it more important to address every point left in a review or just the general themes and tone of the review?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think that, and I know Aaron alluded to this in several of his tips, you all as an organization are going to have to decide what is the best way to respond to reviews for you that are really, reflective and indicative of who you are as an employer. Here's what I'd say. The absolute biggest focus of any response needs to be authenticity. So while I can't say, you really need to respond and identify every single point raised, you also don't want to neglect, any very big theme or big call out and just kind of move on, because that's not going to feel authentic. I'll give you a quick example. One of our clients that we work with, they had a review, a very positive review, 5-star review about all of the things, an employee loved about working there. And in the con, the employee did say the commute is really brutal. So it was a 5-star review. It was so positive, but there was a con. And we just commended this employer's response so well because they did thank their employee for all of the great, they really reiterated why, they're doing some of the things that were mentioned, but they didn't ignore the fact that this 5-star review still said, it takes me so long to get to work. And, then they brought up some of their kind of telecommuting options and remote employee options. So I would say just make sure if you were, from an outsider's perspective, to come and read a review, does the response really effectively answer and address the concerns that have been raised, both positive and negative? And I think ultimately it's really going to vary by organization. And as you all get more comfortable with this process, I think it'll be easier to find your voice and to really understand, how can you authentically represent your brand.
Awesome. Thanks, Molly. So it looks like we are right at the top of the hour. So if we did not get to your question, we will do our very best to follow up with all of you individually. So I wanted to send one more special thank you to Molly, Aaron, and Lamar for joining us today and sharing all of your wonderful and insightful feedback. And I want to thank everyone on the line for joining us today as well. And we will catch you next time. So enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.